this is Tracy Malone from narcissistabusesupport.com. I support families going through divorce with narcissists, going through families with narcissists, wherever you fall on the spectrum, I help people. Today, however, we're going to talk to a very special guest about a topic that is really important for those who are going through and struggling with this. If you have a child with special needs and you're going through a divorce, do you know what to ask? Do you know what to fight for? Are you afraid that the other parent is going to cause havoc, decide not to do what they need to do? What do you do? How do you protect yourself? My next guest is MaryAnn Hughes. She's a mom who has sons on a spectrum, and she fought for her rights. She protected her children, and now she's doing it for everyone else's children. She is now a parent coordinator, special needs, certified divorce coach, and mediator, parent coordinator. She's done so much, and she brings to us a lot of the information that I hope will get you started on this journey. So let's go meet MaryAnn. Welcome, MaryAnn. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Tracy. It's an honor to be here. So excited.
I am so excited because you are a mom who has advocated for her children in divorce with special needs. And I would love to know what your journey was like.
Sure, appreciate that. Yeah, so I see myself first and foremost as my children's advocate, like you mentioned. So I have children on the autism spectrum, meaning they have different degrees and challenges in their autism spectrum diagnoses. And so several years ago, when I was facing divorce, I had to figure out how to get through the process, but more importantly, how to advocate for my kids and make sure that they got what they needed now during the divorce and in the future as they were becoming adults. So I had a lot of things to consider, but I saw that as my main role in the divorce, as to take what I had been doing over the years as being the advocate when they came to school and therapies and so on in life. And now I had to take the role of being their advocate, being their voice, so to speak, in divorce as well.
What a beautiful, motherly, loving thing. And you turned it into a career too, which is like the most amazing part. Yeah, from your pain, as I did, we ended up with new careers. Not what we planned, but certainly with our knowledge, I think it's helped so many people. And I know that there are staggering facts about divorce with special needs children. Isn't it about 87% of people with special needs or autistic child? No, actually, 87 with special needs, 80% with autism that get a divorce.
Right, I've seen those numbers and they're high, whatever the number is. It's people debate those numbers, but it is a high number and it happens all the time, no
Yeah,
matter if the kids are young or older as well.
I know. This is the hard part. So what is the reasoning? Is it just that it's like families can't get along in the care plan, or is it one parent sort of, that's not my job, you do it? What's the major reason for this alarming rate?
Yes, great question. So you're going to have the typical reasons for divorce, right? You're going to have um, communication issues, infidelity issues, financial issues, whatever it might be. But
Mhm.
then you add on the stresses of raising a child with special needs. And I never want to say it's because of the child that people get divorced, but sometimes a marriage can't withstand maybe the extra stress or responsibilities or what that future might look like. Some people are like, well, I didn't sign up for this, and this
Mhm.
is not the vision and future I expected and wanted out of life. And so some people don't stick it out, sadly. But that is the reality. And so, yeah, so my goal is to help people understand what they're dealing with and make the best of that situation, whatever their issues are, maybe try to um, share communication strategies so that even through divorce and afterwards, they can maybe have a better co-parenting relationship than maybe they did while they were married, for instance.
Mhm. Absolutely. And if I look at it, I'm from the perspective of narcissistic divorces, realm. And if they're not getting along with it now and it's causing divorce, what kind of things do people need to know of how to protect their children? Because if you're already not like, no, that's not my problem, how do you fight that battle?
Right. And so the way I approach that is, knowing that we're not going to change a person and their tendencies and their personalities, right? So that's a given. So then how do we deal with a high conflict personality or narcissist or whatever we're dealing with? And so we want to kind of, take what you teach, right, and learn how to play the game in effect. This is um, you're going into divorce. I come at it um, as as a business kind of
Mhm.
transaction. I come from business background, got an MBA. I've got corporate experience, and so I take those skills as well as my special needs mom skills that I have for over 20 years. And how does that work together? So you got to look at who is you're dealing with, what what is going to appeal to them, what's going to make them buy in or contribute or be step up and be an effective parent, whether it's within the time that they're spending with the child, in terms of child support, in terms of future care, how parenting looks like, and ongoing communications. Because the thing with a special needs child is that relationship and that co-parenting is not going to end at age 18. You may have this for the rest of your child's life. Sadly, some people choose to not be involved at all, and those cases happen. But hopefully, the parent is going to have some involvement, throughout their lifetime. And
Mhm.
so we want to figure out, how can we work with that parent to make it as viable as possible for everybody involved.
Mhm. Thank you. That was a great answer. What I'm like in the back of my mind, the clients that I have worked with, and I don't want to generalize here because it's just my limited special needs clients that I've had. Is there a difference between which parent generally is the one that is the advocate for the special needs child? Again, I don't want to judge you, but I'll tell you what mine and what I have seen, but I want to know, is it moms or dads that are usually the advocates?
So I will say moms and dads, and also depending on their personality type, come at this from a different perspective.
Good point.
From my experience and most of my clients being women, I can tell you that we primarily have had the caregiving role and had the role
Mhm.
throughout their childhood to deal with the diagnosis. I mean, both parents are involved for sure, but they're the ones perhaps that are working with those schools and trying to find therapies and trying to integrate them in the community. And so they may be doing the day-to-day work, whereas the dads definitely have an important role, but maybe there's, true, given the model, I know some parents are both working parents, but say you've got one who's the primary caregiver and maybe stays at home more or provides more of that responsibility, and maybe one of the parents is more, usually the dad, not to be sexist, but that happens a lot, where that person goes out and works and then has a different way that they interact with that child, maybe on weekends, maybe in the evening. So they're not seeing maybe the same things that mom might see. And so that causes issues then in the divorce, because they may have a different idea of what that child's abilities are, what their challenges are. And that's one of the biggest conflict um, reasons in these divorce is that one, the mom, for instance, the caregiver, who's sees the day-to-day challenges and sees that child, as they are, when they can totally let go and be themselves around the mom. It's a safe place. And sometimes there's something called masking, where they're trying to have a good front, maybe at school, maybe around dad, to show, certain way of being, but around mom, they're going to let go and just, have their tantrums come out or whatever it might be. And so, um, yeah, so sometimes the dad, for instance, whatever the situation is, may see things differently. Like, oh, they're not, they're doing well at school, they're making good grades. Um, this is the disability is not as maybe serious as you're making it out to be, or the professionals are making it out to be. And so what that means in a divorce is that they're not as willing perhaps to fund the needs that are maybe identified in terms of child support and amount of support in the future. And that's where the conflict comes in. That's where a lot of the issues in divorce and discussions and negotiations are come around, in terms of how do we best take care of that child in terms of time and parenting, but also financially. Raising a child with special needs is very expensive. So you've got to look at now, but also I tell my clients, and I did this for myself, is what's it going to look like in the future? What are those future costs? And what do we need to start thinking about and planning for? And I can tell you that's the reason my divorce took so long and was so complicated, for a lot of reasons. But one of the main ones is I had to do the research. as to what programs were out there, what my kids would need, and how much those programs would cost. And granted, there's some government programs and things that you can get, but you may not get those for a long time. But they're not going to maybe be the type of programs that are going to be right for your family. And so you've got to do your homework so that way you have information to share with your lawyers, with your soon to be ex, or even if you're looking at post divorce to renegotiate some things. What are these things costing, and how can you share that information so it comes across credibly, so that they're not saying it's a you said he said kind of situation, but maybe get professionals involved to have reports and say, okay, these are the facts, this is what it costs to raise a child, and these are the things that we're looking at in the future. How can we both come to the table and contribute to this, whether it's money jointly or whether it's time, or how are we going to take care of our child and their needs?
Very, very good answer. Thank you. What I was thinking about too, and you mentioned it in that little last answer, was the typical stereotypical child support ends at 18 mantra, right? With a special needs child, is there laws that extend it, or are you now fighting the law as well?
That's a great question. So every state is different in terms of how they approach that situation. In Texas, where I am, you can get indefinite, meaning lifelong child support. In some states, there's nothing on the books specifically about that. So 18 is typically the age in a lot of states. In New York, for instance, it's age 26 now. And so, but that's not to say that parents can come together and agree to fund their child's needs ongoing, regardless of the laws in that state. And
Right.
hopefully people will step up and do the right thing.
That would be the goal. And again, I think if you are more prepared, like you were saying, I'm going to look at what courses, what they need to do, what's it going to cost me? I've had parents, evaluating when they've got wheelchair kids. Well, I've got this van now that holds this 4-year-old and his little wheelchair. But when he gets bigger, we're going to have to go to something bigger, and this car's not going to be enough. And really forward thinking to those kind of large expenses, because someone's got to have a car that can put the child in it. And so what you were saying is just, again, what everyone needs to keep in mind. Every kid is going to have different needs. Every state is going to have different requirements. And that's the hardest part. So if we think about this, where do people start to find out what does my state say and what are my rights? And does a lawyer know all this? Or do they need someone like yourself that is a special needs coordinator, parent, coach, everything? How does someone get started knowing what they need besides the research, and this is what the actual physical things are, and the equipment and courses? How do they start with a lawyer or a team or someone that could be their advocate?
Right. Like you said, you don't know what you don't know. And so you want to work with people who have that knowledge, who have that experience. I can tell you there's some great family law attorneys that have that experience, but there's a lot that don't. And as you mentioned, every special needs situation is different. So if they may have worked with one type of situation, it may not take into account everything else that your child may need. And so it is important to find, first of all, an attorney that understands and has experience there, but you also want to work with someone like me, a special needs certified divorce coach who understands, who's been there, who can help you think about the future. If your child is young, it's hard to think that in that way, right? And we want to sometimes people want to hope for the best, but also we want to kind of plan for the worst. So you may not think, oh, my child, you hope that that I'll grow this, or things will get better, or they won't need support in the future, but they may. And so what does that look like? And so in addition to the attorneys and a divorce coach is also financial planners who specialize in special needs. There's a designation called Charter Special Needs Consultant, and that's a great person to have on your team and to bring in as to help you identify some of the costs, how much the life care plan needs to be. There's also an estate planning attorney that plays an important role in terms of the special needs planning for the future, which all the others can kind of do to some extent as well. But they're looking at developing first party trust, third party trust, to protect the child's benefits in the future. What that means is that that's a big part of a child with special needs being involved in divorce, is that you want to protect their eligibility to get government benefits now, whether they're currently receiving them or in the future. So, for instance, when a child turns 18, they're eligible on their own, looking at their own income, to receive, say, it's called SSI. And so, but if you have money in your name, you're not going to be eligible for that, or other Medicaid waiver programs or other government programs. So there's a cap of $2,000 of what that could be in that child's name. And so if you don't do child support and set it up correctly, especially for an adult child, then you may feel like you don't qualify for those other benefits, or you may get turned down when you're making those applications. So it's got to be done by people who understand, and what's going to take in the future, to protect that child's benefits and eligibility, not to be inadvertently disqualified for that. And so you got to have a lawyer who understands that, and the wording of the divorce decree needs to reflect that as well.
I had no idea there were so many factors involved here. Thank you. That's really helpful. But what you were saying kind of also tipped me into, and maybe it's with a given, but in other parenting plans, getting life insurance is really essential. God forbid something happens to the other parent, and the protection of these children's future needs is tied up in that. Is that something that also everyone should remember to do?
That's a very important thing to definitely do if you can. As we talked about, the care for that cost of a child is going to be a lot, and it may exceed someone's ability to work or their lifetime or whatever it might be. And so it's important to have an idea what those numbers are, so you know what type of life insurance to get. And then the way that ties back then to those trusts is you want to have that life insurance then payable to that child's trust, not to them directly, once again. So all these things, all your beneficiaries for all your accounts need to go to the trust, and not to the child.
Yeah, and determining who the trustee is really important too, because again, that's always another battle when it comes down to, well, I don't want you managing the money, and those little tiny pieces are significant when a special needs child
For
is.
some people, for sure, those become points of debate for sure. So hopefully, you trust the, primary caregiver enough to make the right decisions, where they hopefully can be the trustee.
Mhm.
But you can also have separate trusts. You can have a trust that the mom opens, you can have one with the dad opens, or you can have joint ones. So there's different ways to go about it.
Wow. All right. Well, I know that children, no matter special needs or not, struggle in divorce. We know that it's a given, but when you have someone with special needs, are there additional challenges that people should expect?
Sure. So there's all kinds of special needs, and the ones I'm referring to mainly are like autism and intellectual and developmental disabilities. But definitely, you have physical factors as well that definitely are important to consider, and medical conditions, and the extra care that those might require. But you want to ease your child into those transitions, right? Hopefully you don't have one day one of the parents is just gone without notice to the mom or the child, right? That can be pretty traumatic for everybody. And
Mhm.
it takes, and I'll use somebody with autism as an example, it takes them time to get used to change in routine, what their day is going to look like, and they like to know what to expect. So I tried to figure out, how do I help my kids when I was going through this? And so I tried to find mental health professionals, which is another person I forgot to mention that's important to have on your team who understands special needs. But you want to try to find people to support you. But I had a hard time finding somebody who could relate to one of my kids who was not very verbal and had some behavior issues. And so typical therapy is not going to work for that type of situation. And so I tried and I tried, and finally I had a special needs minister at a church that I tried to get some help from because they had a program at their church, but my kids were not fit for that. And he said, MaryAnn, what do you do when your kids are facing something new and different? How do you help them? I'm like, well, I've created social stories for them, for when we go on vacations and there are new things happening in our lives. And so I took that approach, which is something a lot of autism parents may know about, which is a simple, easy to read and understand, like a little story about what's happening and what they can expect. And I created a divorce social story for my kids so they can understand what was happening and what was going to happen next. And I called it "What's Happening to My Family." And so, yeah, I even did a video on that, which I share on my YouTube channel. People can create their own, or I can help them with that. But it's important for the kids to kind of um, I'll say be in the loop. They don't have to know about the adult reasons for the divorce, but you want to let them know things are happening, things are changing. Mom and dad still love you, but things are going to look different. You're going to spend some time with mom and some time with dad. And if you can, get pictures of what the new place might look like that they've never been and what they can expect in terms of, am I going to be going to the same school? Am I going to have different activities? What's my schedule going to look like? Because they're very much schedule driven. And so, as much as you can, not that you have to do it right away, and I suggest easing into changes in schedule. So you don't have to like all of a sudden, have a new schedule for both parents, but maybe you start with a few hours at a time, then a weekend, and then, a longer period of time. But it helps to have a visual calendar also, with pictures or words, or depending on the age and ability of your child, for them to see. Okay, I'm here these days with mom and these days with dad, and that takes off some of the anxiety and apprehension they might have about this whole process.
So keeping the kids informed to the degree that they need to be. Obviously, they don't need to know all the dirty tricks, but to just feel like they know what to expect. Again, that calendar on the refrigerator sounds like a brilliant idea so that it's just a change. And again, things like that are very visual for people sometimes with special needs, where that's a tool that they can relate to versus, I told you you're going to your dad's for a week tomorrow, bye, and they don't really know what to expect. So that's a very helpful thing. What about parents who are going through this because they have to have all this additional stress? How do you help them?
Yeah, so definitely you don't have to do it alone. Right before we started our call, I was on a looking at a Facebook post about someone said, I'm now a single mom with two kids with autism. What do I do?" And sadly, a lot of people don't know about me or the services that are out there prior to divorce. So hopefully, she went through it in the right way. But but know that you're not alone. There's people out there who can help. So whether that's finding a community, finding support for yourself and for your children. So, for instance, your children or you may need some downtime, right? You may need some what they call respite or someone to come in and just kind of offload you a little bit. Because before, when you were married, whatever situation, is that you're kind of sharing the duties, and even within your parenting time, if they would come home or you kind of switch off if you have to go run an errand, you don't have that anymore. So what do you do? So as much as you can, try to find opportunities for you to either have self-care or run the errands that you need to run, without having to have your kids, because sometimes that can be challenging depending on the kids and their abilities and so on. So there's programs that you can find that can provide care, or just hire a sitter if you can. Even during divorce, I suggest that, because you don't want kids to be around when you're having divorce discussions. They're like little sponges, even though they may not be verbal, they still understand what you're saying. And
Mhm.
so we want to kind of shield them from that. And so if you can have those discussions when they're at school, but yeah, we're talking about support. So try to find people to come and help out, and you can maybe go to the other room or do it as whatever you need to do. And then there's play therapists that can help the kids. There's different kinds of supports out there for them. So make sure that maybe the school understands in your therapy locations or whoever your village is that's supporting you and your children what's happening. You don't want to necessarily keep the divorce a secret. I mean, they're going to find out eventually, and sometimes some people are reluctant to talk about it. But I would propose that it's better to let your community know, those people who are taking care of your kids, what's happening, so they can look out for signs and they can support that your child at school or other settings as well.
Yeah, I am always an advocate for notifying the school, talking to the counselors, talking to the teachers, knowing, regardless of special needs or not, is my kid struggling? Are they starting to act out? Are they going in the corner on a break? Are they, what's going on and how is it affecting them? And so with a special needs child, I think it's even more important because we we don't know how they're going to react, and having more eyes on them, having someone with loving eyes because of they have empathy, that they understand what's going on, makes the difference between a child acting out and it being judged as an acting out when it's really caused by the divorce and the confusion in their life. So gentle hands, people that care and will be there if there is something that happens because of the child. So that's very good advice. What have we missed?
Oh, Yeah, just take one day at a time and don't rush through the process.
Mhm,
It's important, as we talked about, being an advocate for your child, but you're also an advocate for yourself. And so you've got to develop the confidence and knowledge of what it takes to be successful in this process. And so people like yourself, people like me, can help you do that. I've created a mini course with my best tips as I went through it, and as a coach, kind of there. I definitely can support people one on one. I'll be developing some group programs and so on. I share lots of information on social media, all the kind of podcasts and all these different events that I do to try to get information out there as to what do you need to do, what do you need to think about, and
mhm,
so yeah, the biggest advice I would give is that be sure to look at the long term
mhm,
for your child. Some people think, okay, I just want to get it done, be divorced, and then we'll deal with it later. But
mhm.
like you said, with high conflict personalities and narcissists, that may be hard to do later. So it's best to try to develop your parenting plan. I know you're doing a lot of effort around that. You know, kind of put some thought into what's a good schedule for the kids, for yourself. What makes sense, right? Not to just have 50-50 for the sake of having 50-50, but really what makes sense for that child, because we want to limit the number of transitions for a child, especially with autism, to go back and forth. That can be hard for them. And so what makes sense? How do we set up vacation times, maybe like a typical parenting plan that maybe in your state doesn't have to apply to your situation, right? The judges or whoever should look at, what's the best interest of that child. And maybe it's something unique that you developed, as part of a team effort, hopefully together, in terms of, how can you best parent that child? And what is that going to look like? And how can we support them through the process?
That's brilliant, and I love that for a close. Now, just one more thing. How do people find you?
Yeah, so my information is all on my special family transitions social media platforms, all across social media. And so the easiest way to find me though is to go to my website, specialfamilytransitions.com, and there's links there to each of my platforms. But also there's a form there. They can just send me a little note as to what they're interested in or what they're looking for, and happy to do a complimentary discovery session, talk about their situation and what they might need to think about and go forward to support them in their situation.
Thank you so much for being a guest on the show today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Tracy. Appreciate the opportunity.
I hope that was helpful. I know it's just a drop in the bucket in the world of all the possibilities that you could have with a special needs child, but it's a beginning. Start somewhere, get the help, get the resources. I'm going to put MaryAnn's information down below and, look her up, ask her some questions, make sure you're on the right path. This is not a place where you want to mess up or not get everything checked that you need to. So this is Tracy Malone. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you are in a divorce with a narcissist, please give me a reach out. I'm on narcissistabusesupport.com. You can find out all the information about working with me, as well as hundreds and hundreds of pages of resources to help you through your divorce. I will see you again next time. Thank you so much for watching today. And if you liked it, please like and even think about subscribing. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.